You're listening to Love and Light with Dr. Lisa, Everyday Living in Peace. Day-to-day living can be difficult in our world today, and most people don't know how to live a peaceful, joy-filled existence. The key to this is simple: love. Join me, Dr. Lisa Collins, for the next hour as I unpack and identify the need for a peaceful, love-filled existence by engaging the challenging and hard topics of life. On this show, you will lean into the healing practices that enlarge your spiritual reality through the act of love. This kind of love begins with yourself and your neighbor and transcends age, race, sex, generation, class, and sexual identity. The world changes when we root ourselves in love. Love and Light with Dr. Lisa starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Lisa, and you are listening to Love and Light, Living Every Day in Peace on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour and let us help you experience how to bring more love into your everyday life. Every second and fourth Wednesday, 1 Pacific time, 12 Mountain, 4 Eastern time, we will have tools for living every day in peace. Life has its challenges, and each of us is doing our very best to take care of ourselves and our loved ones. And as we look out into the world and see the pain and the suffering of others, what is it that we can offer our community to heal and to our world? Where is your light or gift, and how are you sharing it? I want to welcome our very special guest, Kathleen Eichenlaub, who is letting her light shine to dismantle racism and to do what she can to heal trauma caused by racism. Kathleen, welcome to Love and Light.
Thank you, Lisa.
Wow. I mean, that's quite a bit of an description to dismantle racism and do what you can to heal trauma caused by racism. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be on a journey to fight racism.
It was not intentional at the beginning, that's for sure. First of all, I've been kind of on a spiritual path for quite some time, just really looking for that peace and that love. And I've looked in a lot of places, and really everything says the same thing, that it's about love, service, and forgiveness, and I've learned that myself, that when I'm trying to love and be of service to someone, I feel so much better, and I think that's really helped me to kind of embrace that. But literally one day, several years ago, God just put on my heart, racism. And I was like, what? And, as God works, very shortly after that, I happened to be at something at church, and they had some information up, and they were starting something called Becoming Beloved Community. And I asked our priest what that was. And she explained to me that that is a term that, Dr. Martin Luther King talked about a lot, about, racial harmony and everyone living together as equals, and just being in this beloved community. And because I had just had that put on my heart, I signed up. But when I was on my first night to the class, I thought, why am I doing this? Like, I'm not racist. I've had Black friends my whole life, and like, what is this about? But that class, which lasted like 6 to 8 weeks, it really opened my eyes. I mean, we took an online implicit bias test individually that Harvard has. And I was like literally convinced that like something was wrong, because it said that I had an implicit bias towards whites as opposed to Blacks, and I ended up taking that test again sometime later, after I had been working in this area for a couple of years, and it came up the same thing, and I don't defend or explain that anymore, because it's an implicit bias, but I learned so much in that class about what I don't know, and you don't know it until you know it, and I think a lot of stuff around race comes from literally pure ignorance on the part of, white people or whoever. I had heard the term, white privilege thrown around, and I didn't really know what it meant, but I assumed it meant like white and rich, and I was never rich. And so I thought, well, that's not me, and, that's a term that's been around, gosh, for a long time as well, for a long time. And so I learned that that's like, just because I was born white, I was already given a bunch of privileges just because of the color of my skin, and one of the definitions of white privilege is that I really love is, privilege is something that is not a problem because it's not a problem to me,
Wow.
so when I'm not having, the police pull me over for no reason, when I'm not having to have the talk with my son, which isn't about sex, it's about what you do when the police show up, hands up, don't run. All that kind of stuff, that's a privilege. And I did nothing to earn that, and I think that, like I said, I think it's about, number one, listening to people's stories. I mean, if you can actually sit and listen to another human being's story, I don't know how you can be not moved by it, and then also just being open-minded. I think a huge part of it is being open-minded. I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. And I mean, I learned so much in there, and just paying attention and being where my feet are. I mean, how often do so many of us, me included, just are constantly, on a device and don't have our head up and we're not paying attention. One of the women in that first group I was in, beautiful older Black woman, love her to death. And she made a comment in the class about how, because we have two services at church, so the earlier service and the later service. And she made a comment that, like, when she's coming in for the later service and there are people leaving the early service, that she feels like they are ignoring her because she's Black. And I was immediately mortified because I thought, oh my word, I hope that wasn't me. Am I on my phone? Am I thinking about where am I going next and what I have to do? It had nothing, if I did do that, it had nothing to do with the color of her skin. It had to do with me thinking about myself, And so just that comment alone made me pay more attention. And again, this is like, if I try to be open-minded and do what I think God wants me to do, although I don't always know what that is, it just evolves, And so shortly after that woman said that in our group, I went to get my nails done, and they set me next to someone who I know, a Black woman who I know. But walking in, before I even saw her, I thought, oh, I just can't wait to kind of sit by myself and close my eyes and not have to talk to anybody. But because of what the woman in the group just said, now I am sitting next to this Black woman I know. So of course I sat and I talked to her, and we talked about, her son, who is really tall, plays football, but is like a gentle giant. He is just the nicest kid in the world. And she and my son are friends, and she was talking about how he was being bullied. The kids were in middle school then. And I sometimes don't have a pause and don't think. And I just said, gosh, those kids are really lucky that your son is so nice, because, he could slap them upside the head. And like, I didn't even think. And she just, without missing a beat, she said, but he can't do that because he's Black, And so I didn't know that was happening in whatever year that was. It was probably 2019. I didn't know that was happening in my neighborhood, And so every little thing, if I'm open and paying attention, I can use that for it to take me to the next thing.
Wow. I mean, I think one of the things that I really like about you and your work to dismantle racism is that you have been willing to be teachable. And the thing that you mentioned about walking and a person of color or a Black person walking in and not paying attention to you, and not paying attention to them, or them not being spoken to, is a regular experience for people of color. And there's a way of invisibilizing and marginalizing by just not acknowledging. Donna Hicks calls it dignity. She talks about dignity, just not acknowledging them. And that you are pushing yourself to actually learn and grow and change your epistemology, how you see things, and be willing to reach out, that oak leak of loving one another. Like, we don't care for each other, or it's not, racism is not a me thing as a Black woman. It's a community issue. It's all of us. The only way we're going to heal it is to heal it together. And one of the things I really like about the work that you're doing and the work that you're advocating for is that you're doing that, that you're keep learning and growing and trying. And I think for me, your example is so luminous that it does need to be, I mean, that's why you're here. I think people need to hear, like, hey, you don't mean me. I can't be me, because, as one of my very close friends says, when people say racist, they think KKK. Like, you think KKK. Racist, I'm not that. I'm not that person. But really, racism is a spectrum and a continuum. And if we love one another, then we have the ability to care for each other through healing as a community. Wow. You gave a lot to think about. It is time for our first break. And we will be back. You are listening to Love and Light with me, Dr. Lisa, and our guest, Kathleen Eichenlaub, an advocate for dismantling racism and supporting healing. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will explore more about this fascinating subject. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Love and Light, Living Every Day in Peace, and my guest, Kathleen Eichenlaub, an advocate for dismantling racism and supporting healing. But before we continue, in case someone is really interested in what you're doing, Kathleen, how can they contact you? What can you give our listeners ideas about the things that you're doing too?
For now, they can find me on Facebook at Kathleen Winter Eichenlaub.
Awesome. We were talking about how Kathleen got into this work in the last segment, and during the break, I was saying to her that the thought about walking by someone and thinking that you're not doing anything to them, but just to have like that body awareness of, I was taking coursework in interpersonal neurobiology and how it is connected to racism. And sometimes I walk by people and they just scowl. They just either scowl with their eyes or scowl with their mouth. And sometimes they smile with their mouth and scowl with their eyes. And I just have more and more, just like, I don't know, I would love to do a study on that to see, do other people experience that? But really, sometimes as a Black woman, I have seen, and I have stopped making eye contact the way I used to, because I've seen so many distasteful looks on people, like, oh, it's you. And I don't even know if they realize they're doing that. So, gosh, when we talk about racial justice, what does this mean for European Americans? Like, what does this even mean for them?
Gosh, I mean, I know for me, it means I have to, especially now since I've learned enough that I do know better. I mean, it means that I have to have literally an open mind about absolutely everything. And I have to, try to be different, and I mean, Constitution says justice for all, right? And so the history has not been that. The history has not been that, so racial justice would mean that for Black people, Native Americans, they have not been treated equally for so long. And they need that. They need to be treated equally, and that's where, like, every time you say on this program that I'm like working to dismantle racism, and like, it sounds so like it's this huge project, but I mean, it has to start with me. And like you said, in community with each other. And, so being willing to learn, you and I went to the African American Museum for the first time. And it was so amazing and so full of information, most of which I was never taught in any school, and so then not long after that, I took 4 people with me to go. And I took my son, who was 15, one of his teachers, white man, and then 2 friends. And I wanted to share it with everybody, and just be willing to learn this stuff that we were not taught. We were not taught it, and my son at the time, 15, sees the exhibit about Emmett Till, who was 15 when he was murdered, by white people. And he like got tears in his eyes. And, reading some stuff about, Thomas Jefferson having children with his slaves, and then not treating them well. And, my son's like, did he really do that? And I said, yes, he really did, and so here we are in this day and age, and it's not being taught in schools. And so, I just think we have to be open to trying to learn this stuff, and it's a lot of information out there if you're willing to actually look for it and learn from it, and then try in any small way possible to share it with others,
Yeah. And I think, there's a study that around Europe, using European Americans and using the term white, and that people who use the term white were less likely to do multicultural things than people who said European Americans. And I've been in spaces where, someone would say, well, where are you from? Well, I'm white, so I'm not from anywhere. I own everything. And so, this racial justice that we're talking about is a healing space for everyone. And I know that when people get this feeling like their bones are being, their muscles are being pulled. And to me, that's the implicit and explicit memories of the past, of the harm of the past, not just from my ancestors, but for your ancestors as well. And so how that racial justice, I don't think that we have packaged it like that in our society. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're right. And so interestingly enough, part of the work as I continued, I married into the Episcopal Church. Our bishop of the Episcopal Church of the United States is Bishop Michael Curry, a Black man who I have a huge fan crush on, and he's amazing.
I hope he's listening.
Amazing. So if you go to episcopalchurch.org, you can find so many resources on there. One of the resources is, and he's been doing this, a lot of stuff I feel like came up with the murder of George Floyd, but they've been doing this work for a long time, and since before that. And so one of the resources is that the Episcopal Church has a 10-week series called On Sacred Ground, and it talks about, racism against all different cultures. It talks about even kind of in relation to what you just said about, when, people came over from Ireland, they did not treat them well either. Just pick a place, right? So people from Ireland they didn't treat them well either. They wanted to squash any of the traditions and heritage that they had. And they wanted them to be like them being, the English settlers, basically, and so, and then like part of what happened for them is, so they were treated really poorly. And so then when, there's now, they see Black people, now they've just joined in with the, European settlers because they'd rather be the one being mean than having it come at them, which
right.
is so crazy to me. But that's just another resource and that's something anybody can join on Zoom. A ton of, videos, books, articles. It's a lot of work, but you learn so much.
Yeah, I think the settlers colonialism that you mentioned, that, when someone takes over another country or another place, they teach the tenets of their culture, and that becomes the norm culture. And it's really difficult within trying to teach racial justice when, like you said, people think there's no problem. And then it's really difficult teaching racial justice when you're in my skin, because then people think if you're a person of color, you're the expert. Well, I am the expert on my lived experience. I'm the expert on that, but I'm not the expert that can pull everybody along. It needs to be in community. And I think that one of the things that we don't have is we don't have a place to have this conversation. And people are very touchy. They are very touchy about it. Have you met any resistance in the racial justice work you've been doing?
Absolutely. I mean, so I eventually became a leader of that Becoming Beloved community group at church. And so we've done several sessions and, on Zoom since the pandemic. And, I mean, obviously these people have signed up. They know they don't, we haven't tricked them into thinking it's something that it's not. And they're there. And there's always somebody. And well, I'm just going to say it's always a white man who has a huge problem with that term white privilege. And I mean, like, no matter what we say, we can, look it up and say how long this isn't something we didn't make this up. It's not because of George Floyd. And they have such a reaction to that. And there's always one who either they have at least one like kind of blow up about it, or they just keep saying over and over again that they just think that term needs to go away and we need to find a different term for it. And I kind of want to say that the solution to that is to read the book White Fragility. I mean, it's, which was written by a white woman who works in that field, by the way. So
right, Robin DiAngelo. And I think that is the issue for why we can't jump over the hump, because I believe that that's the interpersonal neurobiology of our generation's past, historical trauma coming forward in bodies that are European American. And that feels like you're going to die, but in reality, you are not. And like a wave, it will wash over you, and then you will be able to lean into the community. But I have seen over and over again that comes up, and then people either get angry or in tears or saying I'm a good person. And that is like, we can't get to racial justice when all of a sudden everyone is falling out crying because of the harm of the past. We can heal that. And you know what I'm going to say? Dr. King says only love can do that.
Yes, absolutely. He's with me all the time. I love him. I love, the nonviolence and only love can get rid of hate, and only light can get rid of darkness. I mean, it's so perfect. So perfect.
What do you think what do you think will people need, European Americans, to want to work in community and oneness around racial healing?
Well, I mean, I feel like it's a slow process, right? It's not a fast process, but I think just, it is, I don't think the information is going to stop coming. So and look, I mean, Hollywood's doing a great job with a lot of the movies, I mean, my son and I watched a TV series, The Watchmen, a year or two ago. And, the very opening scene of the very first episode is, the Tulsa race massacre, and he said, did that really happen? And I said, yes, it did. And so one more teaching opportunity presented to me by, a TV show. And then I decided I'd post something about that on Facebook, the massacre. And I asked, did anybody else know about this? And I have a friend on Facebook who lives in Oklahoma, and she said, never been taught to my children in school, and in that 10-week class on sacred ground, they had us watch a 60 minutes, the show, a clip about a story they did where they went back there. In the recent past, and they had like a town hall, And the people that were middle-aged and younger, they had never been taught about the Tulsa massacre, the Black people. They had not, it was just not talked about, you know? So I just think that there is more and more stuff. You're not going to get away from it. I mean, and so I just think more exposure, more people are talking about it.
Well, you're definitely doing your part until you found this and you said that God put it on your heart. That's a big touch. That's a big nudge from the judge, that you leaned into it. And I think what I love is that you do, wherever you are in your walk, you are exuding, and you're doing this very healing work with people in your community. And I think that's the way how we get there. There's only one bridge, and I think that love is it. Well, it's time for a break. I'm Dr. Lisa. You're listening to Love and Light, Living Every Day in Peace. And when we come back, we'll continue to talk about how to be a healer of yourself. And Kathleen Eichenlaub, an advocate for dismantling racism and supporting healing, is here with us today. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Love and Light with me, Dr. Lisa. Kathleen Eichenlaub is here, who's an advocate for dismantling racism and supporting healing. Kathleen, if people wanted to contact you, where could they find you?
You can find me on Facebook at Kathleen Winter Eichenlaub.
Wonderful. We were talking at the break again, and the courage it takes. Racism is a really big issue. It's embedded in all of our systems. Our country was built on the tenets and the practices of othering to such a degree that it's in the water. We're swimming in it constantly. And some of us are trying to survive. And those who are advocates like you sometimes suffer. I mean, it must have taken an immense amount of courage.
Well, I mean, courage, really all it is like being afraid and taking the action anyway. I mean, that's, and I think that's where, kind of working on myself for quite a long time, I have that practice already, and I mean, having some sort of belief in some kind of power greater than yourself, I mean, I call it God. I mean, but like I said, I've looked in a lot of places. And so no matter what you call it, it's really all saying the same thing. It's all about love, service, and forgiveness. It doesn't have to be a religion, or, it can be, Mother Nature, or, Great Spirit, or just something that I'm acknowledging is higher than me,
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of what's helped me to, be afraid and take the action anyway. Because like I said, I mean, when I was like, what God put that on my heart for? Like, what's that about? I was like, I always want to know, like, well, okay, so what do you mean, God? And how's this going to look? And no clue whatsoever, ever, what that was going to be. And I still don't. So
there could be listeners that have something put on their heart. My guess is if it says eat a whole chocolate cake, that's probably not, God putting something on your heart, but something like, and I know, like in my head, like the voice that says, why don't you buy some donuts and take it over to that office? And I say, oh, I don't want to buy donuts for them. I actually don't like them. And I hear the voice over and over again. When it's for me to do something outside of myself, I'm pretty sure that's not me. And so if people are listening, you're an excellent example of that. And another thing why I mentioned courage, because things are really toxic out there. I mean, things are hard in school districts. We have people fighting, mask, no mask, people saying they don't want to hear critical race theory. And yet you kind of pushed forward in social media. You opened a Facebook for fighting racism.
Yeah, well, that was another thing God put on my heart. I mean, I had a Facebook account. It had no picture, no nothing, because when the pandemic hit, that is how we did church. It was on Facebook Live. And so there it was. And after that, God put on my heart, use Facebook as a tool for anti-racism. And I ignored it for quite some time. I was like, I don't want to be on social media. And I just no. And I mean, it kept coming back to me, and I literally kept ignoring it. And, God used a friend of mine from church who said, I was trying to friend you on Facebook, but it doesn't allow that. I mean, I didn't know anything about Facebook. I didn't know there was even a setting for that, but she was my friend. And I thought, well, let me see if I can figure this out. So then there I was, and it just went from there, so.
Wow. So using social media, and what kind of messages did you put up?
I mean, I put up my story, which I've shared with you here. And, I put up just really anything I come across that has to do with racism, as long as it's, all done in a positive way. And, just to be honest, when I first was out there, I know I said to you, look, I found this really cool logo, and it's a company. And well, anyway, the company is F Cancer, but they made a logo that said F Racism, and they used the whole word. And I thought that was so cool. And it was you that said, let's keep it all positive, which again, back to, Dr. King, and just trying to be positive, and I mean, it's open to the public. I do check notifications, like twice in the very beginning, there were people who, made some really disparaging comments, and it's not about me. I don't care, but I don't want to use this platform that's supposed to be used for anti-racism to have somebody making a comment to offend Black people. Mm-hmm. So I try to keep an eye and just, delete them and block them. But, the thing about the Tulsa massacre, the definition of, white privilege being, it's not a problem because it's not a problem to me. 50 things, 50 ways I have privilege, all those, I don't have to have the talk. I don't have to worry about the police. Music, if I come across it, I just kind of came across a musician, and I put that on there. Like, this is what I'm listening to now. And it's a great message, not just a wonderful musician, but a great message as well. So really just anything I come across, and so many white people don't know anything about it, come across something like, how so many Black people, particularly women and even young women, are discriminated against because of their hair, and they're told they have to cut mm-hmm. their braids out. And, there was an article about a young girl in elementary school who said she had to get out of the softball game unless she cut her braids, and she let them cut her braids,
Very disparaging. So we have so many examples over and over again in our country, worldwide, in our country, but particularly in the United States, that show us that, there is a very deep illness here that needs to be healed. And that healing is for all of us. But yet we can't seem to care for one another when it comes to race, sexual identity, when it comes to gender, when it comes to language. That illness needs to be purged from who we are, because that is not who we are authentically. If there is anyone who's listening that they want to find their light, you're an example of someone who has found their light, someone who is using your gifts to help other people. What would you say for them to get started?
I would say just to start to seek some kind of, like I said, some kind of power greater than yourself, some kind of spiritual connection. A lot of people find it out in nature. I mean, it involves self-care, right? Because it's like, I can't give you something or share something with you that I don't already have. And so like, if the answer is going to be love and peace, which I think it is, I have to have that myself. So that means I need to not always be connected to my phone. I need to not be constantly moving. I mean, I'm pretty busy, but I have to have times to myself to pray, to meditate, to be in nature for whatever that is. And then, to have time to investigate whatever it is, like what little thing, it might seem really little or weird or whatever. What is it that I seem to be, something's interesting to me, or I feel like I'm getting some kind of a message. Like, you have to have time to actually go investigate that, because what I found in this process, and I found it at the beginning, is that I am passionate about this, and so then when you become passionate about something, like the more I learn and study and talk about racism, I actually get more fired up about it and more passionate about it. Like I love it, but I wouldn't have said that, going into that very first class. Yeah.
And so the classes that they have in the Episcopal Church, are they for anyone to take?
Yeah. So at episcopalchurch.org, they have information about becoming beloved community. And I believe you can sign up for classes there. They encourage different churches to have their own. And so like our class was through St. David's Episcopal Church in Ashburn. And, if you go there, you can find out about BBC, Becoming Beloved Community, because we hold classes on Zoom. And with it being on Zoom, anybody can join. And the other thing that's on the episcopalchurch.org's website is a 3-video series. I just want to get the name right. It's called Truth and Reconciliation Pilgrimage to Ghana. And it's 3 videos. Bishop Curry and 22 other people went to Ghana back in January of 2017 to go and visit, they called them slave castles, which is like crazy that they even use that word, but
yeah.
So they named the video series The Door of Return, but actually the slaves, when they were being held there in terrible conditions, when they were walking out the door to get on the slave ships, it actually says the door of no return, but they're calling this series The Door of Return, and it's the Episcopal Church going because the slaves were being housed in the basement of an Episcopal church. And so like the church has taken on, like we have to go and look at our past as a church.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a very, very powerful video series with study guide and everything. So.
Wow. That was very powerful. Whew. Well, it was time for a break. You're listening to Love and Light, Living Every Day in Peace. Come back and we will continue to talk about how to be a healer in the world with Kathleen Eichenlaub. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Love and Light with me, Dr. Lisa, and I have Kathleen Eichenlaub, an advocate for dismantling racism and supporting healing, here talking about how she healed from within. Oh boy. And how she works to dismantle racism within her community and using social media. And so how can people reach you on social media, Kathleen?
You can find me at Kathleen Winter Eichenlaub.
Awesome.
I'm on Facebook.
Wonderful.
A little bit on Instagram, but not much. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you're picking up another social media. That's awesome. That is awesome. We were talking about in the last section what people could do, just like how do they find their light, and you were giving some, sharing your experience, and and we were speaking about Dr. King and what he said about nonviolence, and Dr. King, his principles of nonviolence. What he says is that nonviolence is a way for courageous people. It is active nonviolence resistance to evil. And it is aggressive spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. He says nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. The result of nonviolence is redemption and reconciliation. The purpose of nonviolence is a creation of the beloved community, as you have mentioned. And he also says nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. I love that. To defeat injustice, not people. Nonviolence recognizes that evildoers are also victims, are not evil people. The nonviolent resistor seeks to defeat evil, not people. Nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform. Nonviolence accepts suffering without retaliation. Unearned suffering is redemptive and has tremendous educational and transformational possibilities. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Nonviolence resists violence of the spirit as well as the body. And nonviolent love is spontaneous, unmotivated, unselfish, and creative. And lastly, nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. The nonviolent resistor has deep faith that justice will eventually win. Nonviolence believes that God is a God of justice. Amen. I could go preaching on that one. Wow. When we think about that, I have no words. I mean, his words speak so clearly and from the heart more than anything else. And I think this is what you're exuding through the actions that you're taking, transforming.
Well, I mean, like I said, I just love Dr. King and everything he's written or said. And and so like for me, I'm not going to argue with anybody like in an unkind way, so like nasty comments on Facebook, I deleted them and I blocked them. I'm not going to sit there and get in a fight. And that takes me over, to the dark side, if you will. I'm not in the light when I do that, but, and so that's, that's what I try to do. And so the work for me that I didn't know was for this reason, the work for me of, learning how to pause before I open my mouth or use the keyboard, because, I don't want to be an unkind person. And I don't want to be in an argument with people in a nasty way. And one of my favorite sayings for the last several years is, you don't have to say everything you think, which I think is the exact opposite of what's been going on in the world for a little
Absolutely.
while, especially on social media,
Mm-hmm.
So, and the whole light thing, I just love it because, you've said it, is that I'm finding my light and I'm sharing it, right? It's already there. Everybody has that light. You just have to find it, and I have another friend who says, let your light out, there it is, and let it out for others,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there are communities. I talk a lot about healing communities of support. And if there's not a community, then I would say you can create a community. You can create a community of support for yourself. You could create a healthy community. You could create a community where you're looking at injustice and not people. You're looking at, I want to fight injustice. I'm not fighting people.
Right.
And that you have best wishes for people. I mean, I've seen it over and over again when I'm talking to one person, whether we came from any of the epistemologies or ideas that we have about ourselves. When we connect one person to the other person, it's like the God in me and the sees the God in you.
Yes.
Then we can heal.
That's right.
We can heal and we can do that.
That's right.
And this resistance of, as we were saying on the break, that like the world's a pie. Like if I work for injustice and I have my pie, you can't have any. That's false. Think about it, people.
Correct.
If Kathleen's kids go to college, that doesn't mean my kids can go to college.
That's right.
It's not a pie. That's a God of scarcity. We have a universe of abundance. And so it's a paradigm shift too. And with social media, with TV, with movies, I'm shocked at the amount of the things that I see that are anti-Black. And it's just in the fabric. And for me, it's important for me to call it out and for me to teach my children, like, wait a minute, did you see that? And have that conversation. And so if you're a parent, you're wondering what you could do, that is one thing that you could do. When you're watching Boss Baby and the Black baby is barking like a dog chasing the white baby, this really actually happened. I stopped the TV and said to my son, what do you see? And my son's biracial. What do you see? And him and I had a conversation about it. That's loving kindness. What other tips would you have for people who want to work in racial justice? It's really like, seek and you'll find. I mean, really, truly. And, I was so averse to getting on social media, but being on there for the reason I am and trying to only be positive and having it be public, which I know many people don't want to do that. But, I have come across people, and I would always in my head make fun of my mom when she would say a friend because they were only friends on Facebook. But like, I have met people and found other pages where I am learning more I'm learning more things. And so here's this community that, it's on Facebook, but you know what? There's someone out of Baltimore, which is my hometown, fighting for justice and equality. And they're constantly posting, both some terrible things that are happening as well as some, awesome things. And then, Operation Frederick Douglass, where the man who's the great nephew of Frederick Douglass, and he lives in Maryland, he put together this whole thing for, having a mural up there. And he posts all of these amazing things that I'm learning about too. And so there really is a lot out there. And then you see like other people, and I really can't even believe I'm saying this is all on social media, but like, and then people who do come and comment on my stuff, there's a community there too, even if it seems like there's some kind of an algorithm that doesn't show it to a lot of people, which it often seems like that. But if you are open to it, it will come to you or you will find it. Wonderful. Thank you, Kathleen. It has been an illuminating, amazing time with you. And I'm so proud of the work that you're doing to fight against, to be in community with me as I fight against the injustice for all people. And that's very special. I hope maybe you'll come back at some time and share with us again. Oh, I can't believe our time is up. Well, I want to thank Kathleen Eichenlaub for being here. And I want to say to you, my tip of the week is the same. Treat yourself. Remember, treat yourself like you're your best friend. If you want to contact me, Dr. Lisa, you can go to educationthroughengagement.com. And again, I want to thank Kathleen, and please tune in to Love and Light with Dr. Lisa, living every day in peace. And next time we will have Kathleen Booker, the Jedi, the calm Jedi, will be here. We'll be talking about breath work in women. Please take good care of yourself. Be well. See you next time with Love and Light with Dr. Lisa. Bye. Thanks for listening to Love and Light with me, Dr. Lisa, Everyday Living in Peace. You spent the last hour engaging in challenging and transformational conversations, all for the purpose of living a peaceful, joy-filled existence. Join me next time to continue growing in love and light through healing practices and acts of love. To learn more or work with me, Dr. Lisa, visit educationthroughengagement.com. That's educationthroughengagement.com. Remember, the world changes when we change by coming home to love. Tune in every second and fourth Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, here on transformationtalkradio.com.